What cracks louder than a falling tree? The sound of a marriage snapping. For years, Charlie's towering oak stood as a symbol of his life, rooted, unshakable, enduring. But today, the chainsaw's roar isn't just felling timber, it's severing. Trust, love, and every lie his wife Chris buried beneath their shared soil. The neighbors gather, cameras roll, and the tree crashes down, crushing not just the earth, but two luxury cars. One belonging to his best friend, the other to the man who'd turned brotherhood into betrayal. Charlie's hands shake, not from guilt, but grim triumph. This was no accident. Inside the house, music blares, drowning out the chaos. Behind locked doors, Chris and her lover cling to their final moments of ignorance. But Charlie's chainsaw isn't done singing. What happens when a quiet man's rage becomes a symphony of shattered glass and sirens? And what price does betrayal pay when karma wears a carpenter's boots? Sometimes the sound of betrayal doesn't echo through whispers behind closed doors, but through the grinding teeth of a metal chain. A man stands in the very center of the life he built over the years, a saw in his hand, a fire in his heart. That tree is not just a tree, it carries his years, his trust in the weight of betrayal. But the hardest blow comes when the truth is crushed beneath a fallen giant. And that morning, the sound of a chainsaw didn't just split wood, it split a marriage. But how the air was heavy, the sky was grey, and the wind whispered through the branches of the trees. Charlie had never felt so uneasy. All the years he had lived on this land, today was a day of great change. A chapter in his life was about to close, never to be the same again. He tightened his grip on the saw. To him, this tree was a symbol, a witness to the past, standing tall in front of his home for years, enduring storms and winds. But now it was time for the giant to fall. Just like realizing the truth sometimes turns a person's entire world upside down, this tree too had lost its former strength. Josh stood on the porch, camera in hand, ready to capture the moment. This will be the most unforgettable moment of your life, Charlie thought. But there was something Josh didn't know. This wasn't just the fall of a tree. This was the unveiling of a betrayal. He started the saw, the roar of the engine filled its intermittent grumbles, rising like a warrum into the sky. Charlie was careful as he made the first cuts. Dropping the tree at the wrong angle could be disastrous. But he had done the calculations, every detail had been planned, down to the last millimeter. The first crack sounded and Charlie stepped back. The tree began to lean, its leaves brushing against each other. With whispering-sized neighbors stepped into their yards. News crews turned their cameras, everyone was watching. A tree fall. But no one realized they were witnessing the collapse of a life. When the final strike came, the tree slowly tilted, casting a massive shadow, then the deep, resonant thud of impact. A strange sense of satisfaction welled up inside. Charlie, the most critical part of his plan, had unfolded perfectly. His eyes immediately darted to the edge of there directly beneath the massive trunk lay two things. One was Chris's bar-new luxury truck, the one he had admired so much. The other was the car, belonging to the man who Charlie had once called his best friend. A betrayal should come at a heavy cost. As the tree fell, a suffocating silence spread through the air. That moment, the enchanted seconds when everyone stood still, swallowing hard, was almost poetic. Wide-eyed neighbors, news cameras, the clash of metal and the shattering of glass. Everyone thought Charlie had skillfully brought down a tree. But he'd brought down so much more. Within seconds, hushed whispers started to ripple through the crowd. Charlie slowly set the chainsaw on the ground and walked toward the wreckage with the measured steps of a craftsman who had just completed his masterpiece. Before him lay two utterly crushed vehicles, Chris's expensive new truck and Pete's car, the car of the man who had pretended to be Charlie's friend while betraying him behind his back. A big, massive accident, at least. That's what everyone would think. But Charlie, deep inside, mild, some accidents are perfectly orchestrated. People began moving. Toward him, a few neighbors gasped. Oh my God. The cars. Luckily, no one was inside. Josh, still holding his camera, captured every detail he was going to enjoy rewatching. This, but Charlie's greatest pleasure was yet to come. The music inside the house was still playing loudly in that room. Chris and Pete, drowning out their own betrayal with music, remained blissfully unaware of what was happening outside. Charlie's face was calm, betraying nothing. He slowly stepped onto the porch before entering. He paused for a moment, taking in what his home had become. In the living room, on the table he had once carefully built for Chris, with love lay scattered underwear and an empty wine bottle. That table, crafted with devotion, sat by his hands, given as a gift. And now, it held the belongings of another man. He took a deep breath. The people inside didn't even care. He had trusted, he had loved, and in the end, this was what he got. But now he had only one message left for them. He reached for the doorknob. Locked. Of course it was locked. Chris always did that. She couldn't lock her loyalty, but she sure as hell could lock the door. Char took a step back, gripped the chainsaw once more, and calmly pulled the cord. The machine roared to life, its sound growling like a beast echoing through the house and within. Seconds, that door was no longer locked. The screams from inside overpowered even the growl of the chainsaw. Charlie could see Chris and Pete scrambling out of bed, completely lost on what to do as the door swung open. Chris's eyes filled with tears. Pete, stark, naked, was as pale as a ghost. Charlie slowly lowered the chainsaw, but the engine was still running. He wanted to savor the moment. He locked eyes with Pete and spoke in an icy voice. I came through the door. The window is yours. Come on, big man. Save yourself. Now, and at that moment, Pete let out a scream and threw himself out the window. The sound of shattering glass echoed like a melody in Charlie's ears. He turned his gaze to Chris's trembling body. Good. She finally understood what she had done. Slowly he shut off the chainsaw and looked at her own. Last time. Mary's on her way, he said, and she's bringing her gun. I don't know what she'll do, but if I were you, I'd run. Chris's eyes widened in terror. She hadn't even considered that inside the house. Years of trust, love and loyalty had just burned to ash. Nothing would ever be the same again. Chris's trembling lips parted, but no words came out. She had nothing left to say. The excuses were exhausted, the lies had collapsed, and the truth stood before her, naked and undeniable. Charlie switched off. The Sawand stepped back. It was over in that moment. There was no anger, no rage, just emptiness. The heavy, hollow silence that follows something truly ending. Chris sprang from the bed, wrapping the sheets around her body, sobbing. Charlie, I'm so sorry. I don't even know why I did it. It didn't mean anything, I swear. But Charlie wasn't listening anymore. He already knew it didn't mean anything. A 10-year marriage, thousands of shared moments, dreams built together, all destroyed for a few. Moments of thrill. Maybe he should have felt angrier, but he had nothing left to feel. Just minutes ago, 2 luxury cars had been reduced to wreckage below, and now Chris's life lay in ruins just the same. Outside, the sound of sirens grew louder. Mary had arrived, and she had brought a gun. Chris's eyes filled with pure fear. Charlie, I don't know what to do, she whispered. Charlie shook his head. I think you know exactly what you need to do right now. Chris froze. Then she cast one last searching glance around. The house she had lived in for years, but she realized she would never find what she was looking for, because this house was no longer hers. Charlie gestured toward the backpack. Your bag is packed. Take it and get out. Chris nodded frantically, snatched the bag from the floor, and ran toward the front door just as she reached it. Mary's truck came speeding into the yard before Mary could even step out. Chris slipped through the back door and disappeared. The woman who had once been the lady of this house was now nothing more than a fugitive fleeing from it. These were her final steps. Here Mary gripped the gun tightly. But when she met Charlie's eyes, she understood. The job was already done. She's gone, she asked. Charlie nodded. Yes. Mary looked at him for a moment. Neither of them spoke. The weight of everything that had happened filled the silence. Then she placed a firm hand on Charlie's shoulder. She got what she deserved. "But how are you?" Charlie hesitated. It was a question he had never truly asked himself. Before, how was he really? He narrowed, his eyes slightly gazing at the massive fallen tree, the shattered trucks, the remnants of a life that no longer existed. Then he took a deep breath free, and for the first time, he truly felt it. A few months later, everything had changed. Charlie sold the house and moved far away from the noise of the old town. He had started fresh, a new beginning. The oak stump remained, a scar in the soil where roots once ran deep. Charlie left it untouched, a monument to the life he'd raised. Chris vanished like smoke, her whispers lost to the wind, while Pete's name became synonymous with shame in their hollowed-out town. Mary kept the gun, but she never fired it. Some wounds, she decided, cut sharper when left to bleed. Charlie's new cabin stood miles away, its walls untainted by memory. He planted saplings there, slender, fragile things that bent but didn't break. Seasons passed. The old house sold to a young couple who knew nothing of chainsaws or shattered glass. They hung wind chimes where the oak once cast its shadow. One evening, Charlie found a letter in his mailbox. No return address, just 2 words: "I'm sorry." He burned it, watching the embers rise like fireflies. Redemption, he'd learned, wasn't in forgiveness. It was in silence. The forest grew thicker. So did he. Endings aren't always neat, but they're always honest.